There are mornings, and I want to be honest with you from the very first breath of this. There are mornings when I finish the shacharit, the full morning prayer service, from the first word to the very last, and I feel nothing. Not peace, not warmth, not the quiet sense that anyone, anywhere is receiving what I am sending. Just words, just the sound of my own voice in a still room, and then the sound of the room itself, once I am done. I am 68 years old. I have been a rabbi for 40 years. I still have mornings like that. I want to say that again because I think it is important that you hear it clearly. I am not describing a season I passed through in my 30s and recovered from. I am telling you that a man who has given his whole working life to Torah, to prayer, to sitting beside people in their hardest hours, I still have mornings where the words feel like stones in my mouth. Still, this past winter, last Thursday, if you want the particulars, and I am saying it not to discourage you. I am saying it because I have a feeling, and 40 years of sitting across from people in my study has sharpened this feeling considerably. I have a feeling that you came here tonight carrying a question you have not quite said out loud. Something that sounds like this. Why does it feel like I am talking to the ceiling? Why do I finish a prayer, sometimes a very long prayer, sometimes a very sincere one, and feel exactly the same as when I began? Or sometimes, and this is the harder part, I feel worse, because now I have the emptiness, and on top of it, I have the guilt about the emptiness. Have you ever sat at the kitchen table after a prayer that gave nothing back, my friend, and thought, is something wrong with me? Not with God, not with the words. With me, I have. Many times, more times than I would like to admit, and I am admitting quite a lot tonight. There is something Rebbe Mordecai, of blessed memory, said to me on a cold Wednesday afternoon in Brooklyn in January of 1984. I was 27 years old. My father was in the hospital, and something in my prayer life had gone dry in a way that frightened me, in a way that felt less like a dry season and more like a door that had quietly closed. I went to Rebbe Mordecai's study and I told him what was happening, and he asked me one question. He gave me one answer, short as a breath, quiet as a lamp in a small room. I have carried it every single morning since, especially the empty ones. I think what he said to me might be what you need to hear tonight. What I want to give you tonight is not a feeling. I want to give you something more durable than a feeling, because feelings come and go, and if our entire understanding of prayer rests on feeling, we are standing on ground that shifts beneath us every morning. The Jewish tradition has thought carefully about this problem, far more carefully, and for far longer than any of us have been struggling with it individually. And the answer the sages arrived at, the answer that finally settled something in me, not quickly, but slowly, the way good things tend to settle, was smaller than I expected, and kinder than I expected. It will not dissolve the emptiness in a week. I will not pretend otherwise. You know by now that I do not make those kinds of promises, but it will change what the emptiness means. And sometimes, my friend, that is the more important thing. Now let me tell you a little story. Brooklyn, 1984. January. The kind of cold that comes through the walls even when the windows are sealed shut and the radiator is doing everything it can. I was 27 years old, not yet 2 years into my work as a congregational rabbi, and my father had been in the hospital for 3 weeks. Not a fatal illness, thank God, but the kind of illness that changes the quality of the air in a household. Everything sits a little heavier. Every morning feels a little less certain than the one before. Each morning, as I had done since I was a boy, I stood at the Amud, the prayer stand in the small sanctuary, and I opened the Siddur, the prayer book, and I read. All of it. I did not rush. I did not skip a page. And I want to tell you exactly what it felt like, because I believe some of you know this feeling and have perhaps wondered whether you were alone in it. It felt like pouring water onto dry stone. The words went into the air of the room, and nothing came back. No warmth, no echo, no sense that the words were traveling anywhere beyond those four walls. Just the words themselves, hanging there for a moment, and then the silence that follows them. After 3 weeks of this, I went to see Rebbe Mordecai. His study was a small room, never very tidy, books on every surface, a lamp with a warm yellow light that always seemed to be working a little harder than the lamp itself. The room smelled of old paper and faintly of the black tea he drank throughout the day. He looked up when I came in. He had a way of looking at a person that asked nothing. He simply received you, the way a room receives warmth. I sat down across from him and I told him what had been happening. I said, Rebbe, I think I have lost my faith. I said, I get up every morning, I say every word, I go through the entire service without skipping, and I feel nothing. I said it feels like speaking into an empty room. And I remember, as I was saying it, feeling a kind of shame alongside the fear, because a rabbi should not feel this. A rabbi should know better. A rabbi, I thought, should have fixed this by now. Rebbe Mordecai was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the table between us and then back at me, and then he asked one question. He said, Every morning, do you get up and stand before the words? I said, yes. Every morning. He said, then you have not lost anything. That was all. Not an explanation, not a lecture, not a story from the Talmud or a verse from the Psalms or a technique for recovering feeling. Just those words, in that order, in that lamp-lit room in a Brooklyn winter. And I sat there, and I did not fully understand. But something in me, something quieter than understanding, received it. Like dry ground receives rain before it knows what to do with the water. I walked home through the January cold. The words walked with me. Every morning, do you get up and stand before the words? And here is where the Torah opens its door for us. There is a word in the Jewish tradition, I will say it in its transliterated form, the way my Rebbe used to say it, kavanah. It is one of those words that English cannot quite carry in a single translation. It is most often rendered as intention or concentration or focus. But all of those feel a little too angular, a little too mechanical for what the word is actually pointing toward. Kavanah, at its heart, means the direction of the heart. Not the warmth of the heart, not the feeling of the heart, the direction. In the Mishnah, the great codification of the oral Jewish law, in the tractate called Barakot, in the 5th chapter, the very first teaching, we are given this instruction. One who prays must direct his heart. The verb the text uses means to aim, to orient, to face. The obligation placed upon the one who prays is not to feel a certain way. It is to be turned in a certain direction. These are not the same thing, my friend. And the difference between them is where I believe many sincere and faithful people have gotten quietly, painfully lost. Now I want to sit with you in a story from the first book of Samuel. Chapter 1, verses 10 through 13. Her name is Hannah. She is a woman who has longed for a child for years and has not been able to have one, and she has carried this grief in a society where such grief is not carried privately. She has been taunted. She has wept at the dinner table. She has stopped eating. And on one of the festival days, she goes to the temple at Shiloh and she prays. The text describes what her prayer looks like from the outside. It says she was speaking in her heart. Her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. She was not producing sound. She had no beautiful form to offer. She could not even keep her grief contained enough to give it a voice. And Eli the priest, the senior religious authority in the room, the man whose whole life was devoted to recognizing genuine worship, looked at her from across the sanctuary and concluded that she was drunk. I find that detail remarkable every time I read it. Remarkable and a little sore. Here is Hannah at the bottom of her grief, turning her whole broken self toward God with everything she has. And the man who is supposed to know prayer, when he sees it, does not recognize it as prayer. But God recognized it. God answered Hannah. Out of all the prayers spoken in that temple on that day, the one that was heard was the one without a voice. The one that came from exactly where Hannah actually was, broken, silent, and turned, however shakily, in one direction. The rabbis of the Talmud, in the tractate Barakot, at the 31st page, spend careful time with Hannah's prayer. They study it closely. And one of the things they draw from it is this: the sincerity of a smaller prayer outweighs the length of a performed one. The prayer God answered was not the impressive one, it was the honest one. And then there is Psalm 22, just the first verse. I want you to sit with it for a moment because I think it is one of the bravest lines ever written. My God, why have you forsaken me? That is a prayer, said by someone who feels absolutely nothing. No warmth, no presence, no sense of being heard. And it is in the Psalms, which is the book of prayers. The tradition looked at that sentence and said, yes, this belongs here. This is what prayer sounds like sometimes. If the Psalms include a prayer cried out from the place of feeling abandoned, then feeling empty is not disqualification from prayer. It may be on certain mornings the most honest prayer of all. Now I have to be honest with you, my friend. Most people read this and miss something gentle. The most common mistake I have seen, and I say this without judgment, because I lived inside this mistake for years myself, is what I would call the light switch understanding of prayer. You go to the switch, you flip it, the light comes on, and if the light does not come on, you draw one of three conclusions. The first, there is something wrong with the switch, meaning God is not listening or not there. The second, you are flipping it incorrectly, meaning you are praying wrong. The third, and this is the one that does the most quiet damage, you are simply not the kind of person whose switch connects to anything. None of these conclusions, my friend, follow from what the tradition actually teaches. Not one of them. My Rabbi Leah, of blessed memory, prayed every single day of her life from the time she was a small girl in Lithuania until the last week of her life in Brooklyn in the autumn of 1979. 70-some years of prayer. And I watched her pray many times as a boy in the kitchen on Eastern Parkway with the light coming through the window over the sink. In her younger years, there was a quality to her prayer that even a child could sense without being able to name it. Something settled, something warm and certain. But in her last years, she was in her late 70s, tired in her bones, having outlived her husband and two of her closest friends, her prayers became very short, very quiet. Sometimes just a few words at the kitchen table, her hands around a cup of tea that was going cold. And I asked her once, I was perhaps 35 at the time, I asked her, "Bubby, do you still feel something when you pray?" She looked at me, not annoyed, not sad, just steady, the way she always was. And she said, "Ariel, I am almost 80 years old. I am tired in a way that does not go away when I sleep. But every morning I turn my face. That is what I have. Every morning I turn my face." She was not describing a failure, my friend. She was describing, in 7 words, the whole of what the Mishnah means by kavana. There is another word the tradition uses, the word for the opposite of kavana. It appears in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, in the 2nd chapter, the 13th teaching, where we are told not to make our prayer keva. Keva means fixed, rote, mechanical. Prayer that has hardened into shell without interior. And people often hear that warning and assume it means, do not say the prayers without warm, beautiful feeling. But I think the warning is something narrower and more specific than that. Keva is not the absence of feeling. Kiva is the absence of self. It is saying the words while you are nowhere inside them, while you are planning your afternoon, rehearsing an argument you lost 3 days ago, simply letting the sounds pass through the room while your attention has left the building entirely. Emptiness is not the same as absence. You can be fully, genuinely present inside an empty heart. You can carry your whole tired, dry, discouraged self into a prayer that produces no warmth whatsoever. That is not kiva. That is kavana under difficult conditions. And I have come to believe, after 40 years of watching people pray through hard things, that this is the most honest kind of prayer in existence. So what do we do with this, you and I, on a Tuesday morning? I want to give you 3 things you can actually carry, not programs, not systems. 3 small practices that I have offered to people in my study over many years when they came to me with this exact question, and that I return to myself on the mornings when the words give nothing back. The first, keep showing up to the words, even when the words do not show up for you. I know that sounds plain, but I want you to understand something the tradition understands very clearly. Form teaches feeling, not the other way around. We do not wait until we feel moved in order to pray. We pray in order to learn, over a long time, what being moved is. Rebbe Mordecai used to say, and I heard him say this more than once, in different rooms, to different people, that a man who prays only when inspired will pray perhaps a handful of times in a full year. A man who prays every morning will have, over the arc of a lifetime, some hundreds of mornings of genuine fire. And the rest will be faithful, ordinary, unremarkable showing up. And the faithful showing up, he said, is what holds the life together. Not the fire alone. The quiet daily, sometimes dry showing up. Rabbi Leah lit the Shabbat candles every Friday evening for 60 years. Some of those evenings she felt the holiness of the moment. I saw it on her face, that particular stillness. Some of those evenings she was exhausted or grieving something or simply going through the motions of a very long life. The candles did not know the difference. They gave the same light. The second, name the emptiness and bring it with you into the prayer. You do not need to arrive pretending to have warmth you do not have. The tradition does not ask for a performance of feeling. It asks for kavana, for direction, and you can direct an empty heart just as honestly as a full one. You might say, in your heart or quietly under your breath, something as unadorned as this: I am here. I do not feel much tonight. This is what I have to bring. I'm turning my face. That is a prayer. Not a beautiful prayer, perhaps. Not the kind that looks like anything from across the room. But Hannah's prayer did not look like much from across the room either. Eli the priest thought she was drunk, and God answered her. The third is the hardest for people to accept, because it is the simplest, and simple things have a way of making us feel like we are getting away with something. When prayer feels impossible, do not abandon it. Make it smaller. One sentence that you mean is worth more than an hour of words you have already left behind. This is what the rabbis drew from Hannah in the Talmud. A sincere word outweighs a long performance. And it is what I watched Rebbe Mordecai practice in his final months, when his body was failing and his energy was very small. He prayed the Shema every morning, just the first declaration, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Some mornings I am told by those who were with him just those words, and then silence. That was his prayer. That was the direction of his heart, at the end of a long life of scholarship and teaching and study, not less than what he had once offered. The same thing distilled. If all you have tonight is one sentence, my friend, bring one sentence. If all you have is 3 words, bring 3 words. Do not let what you cannot do crowd out the small and true thing that you can. I want to return for just a moment to that Wednesday afternoon in Rebbe Mordecai's study. The lamp burning, the cold coming through the walls, the smell of old books, and the tea he had been drinking since morning. I came to him convinced that something had broken inside me that could not be repaired. I came carrying the kind of shame that is particular to religious people who feel they have failed at the most important thing. And he did not offer me a technique. He did not offer me a program for generating feeling. He asked one question: "Do you get up every morning and stand before the words?" When I said yes, he said, "Then you have not lost anything." Because what Rebbe Mordecai understood, and what the tradition understands from the Mishnah through Hannah through the Psalms, is that prayer is not primarily something we feel. Prayer is something we do. It is a direction, not an emotion. And as long as we are turning, even if the turning is stiff, even if it is tired, even if it produces nothing visible from the outside, we have not lost the thread. My dear one, if you came here tonight carrying some quiet shame about how dry your prayers have felt, I want you to hear this as clearly as I know how to say it. The emptiness is not evidence against you. It is not proof that you are not a person of faith. It is not proof that your prayers do not reach anywhere. It is not a verdict on your sincerity. Bubby Leah, at almost 80, with all of her grief and all of her tiredness and all of the years behind her, turned her face every morning. That is what she had. And it was enough. It was, in its quiet way, everything. You and I live in a world that does not have much patience for the slow, the dry, the faithful, and unremarkable. We are told that real faith should look like fire, that real prayer should move us, change us, produce something we can feel and name. But the tradition says something older and quieter than that. It says, direct your heart, turn your face, come back tomorrow. And the day after that, and perhaps one of those days, the warmth will come. And perhaps on that day you will understand, looking back, that it was never the warmth that held you. It was the turning. If this question has been sitting quietly in your heart for a while, if you have wondered whether you were alone in it, leave a shalom in the comments below. Just that one word. I read every one of them. May you walk in shalom, dear neighbor.